therapist, Wemimo Adebi. Thank you so much for joining us on TVC Breakfast, Wemimo. Quite interesting conversation we'll be having, on this last leg of the TVC Breakfast this Friday, because domestic violence is something that is affecting a lot of people, and some are even saying, how does it concern men? But first and foremost, help us to share the scope and impact of this domestic violence. Help us understand it. In what ways does it manifest?
First and foremost, I need to let everyone understand that domestic violence is actually a repeated behavior. And most times people believe it's usually one-off. But the more, so long as it becomes a repeated issue that frightens, intimidates, that manipulates, that humiliates, and that makes the, permit me to use the word the victim, because we're not expected to use the word victim, they're survivors, and makes him or her lose its true essence, then the individual is, is involved in domestic violence. However, the impact is huge. It impacts on the physical health of the survivor. What do I mean by that? When an individual is constantly exposed to violence domestically and all of that, at one time or another, there will be an infliction of pain, an infliction of injuries, wound, and much of the times the individual may become ashamed of it in that light. Then another impact is the psychological aspect of domestic violence on the victim. Let me use that word, survival. And, when it comes to domestic violence and how it affects the survivor psychologically, a lot of people do not know that the impact of domestic violence affects people mentally. The mental state, the emotional stability, the way the individual begins to view life, begin to view himself. And if the individual is not careful, the survivor would also develop a behavior that tends towards becoming aggressive in the light of becoming defensive. So at the end of the day, you are having aggressors coming together, staying together, sharing space, and then reproducing aggression towards one another. And it doesn't end there. When you also talk about the health implication, the health implication is huge. A lot of people tend to, develop depression. And, that is actually the top stage. It begins with maybe someone got hit on the head. The individual is likely to have one injury or another. Or maybe when it comes to other areas where the heart is affected, high blood pressure and other things. So the impact is huge. It's enormous. It's something we cannot finish talking about.
That's right.
All right, so listening to what you just said, I'm asking a question as regards persistent adherence to patriarchal norms and beliefs. How does this fuel domestic violence? Because we see that a lot of people hold on to some beliefs, that some patriarchal beliefs about the male gender. So how does this fuel domestic violence?
Could you please take that again?
Persistent adherence to patriarchal norms and beliefs in our society. How does this fuel domestic violence?
Well, we have lots of beliefs in the society. To start with, I'll say that we have cultural beliefs that says that it's normal for people to have misunderstanding. It's normal for people to develop, some sort of aggression towards one another. And so long as it doesn't take your life. But I'll say that anything, that is repeatedly done, that, kills your joy, that inflicts pain, that makes you feel out of control, it's something you should not embrace, or something you should never allow, so long as, okay, it has to do with you directly, whether you're a male or female. I'm not sure if I was able to answer that, because I didn't quite get it clearly.
Okay.
But in all of it, there are several misconceptions about the issue of domestic violence. You've tried to make us understand exactly what the concept of domestic violence actually means. But at the same time, there are some misconceptions which we would like you to help us talk about. Could you help us dispel some of these misconceptions that are used to describe domestic violence?
Okay, yeah, there are a lot of misconceptions. For example, some people believe growing up in a dysfunctional family is okay, as in culturally, a man is supposed to be in control over a woman. And then to gain control, you have to subject the other party to some adverse dealings and treatments. And that's one misconception. The other misconception could also be that, especially when it comes to women, when you get married, they tell you you have no place here. You can't come back home. You remain there. In quotes, they tell you you die there. Okay, so the misconception, keeps ringing behind, at the back of the head of the woman. I have no other place to go to. I'm going to remain here. There's also another misconception that says that the modern day families are not meant, okay, to come to your rescue. When you have issues, when you cry out, if at all, they ask you, it is a situation in your home, your four walls. You need to be able to deal with it by yourself. And, there are a lot of traditional beliefs, religious beliefs around it. But everything still boils down to control, where you control how people live their lives, and then you believe that we use conceptions and misconceptions to control other people. So basically, those are the few things I'll be able to mention for now.
Okay, so looking at domestic violence against women, sometime, I think last year, there was a figure that came out that states that a certain percentage of men are beginning to report domestic violence. Now, how does this, we've talked a lot about how it affects women. How does this affect the male gender? And why do you think we don't have a lot of men come out to report these cases?
Yeah, I'm so glad you are asking that question, because when it comes to domestic violence, it affects both gender. Okay, it's not a female thing, and neither is it a male thing. Yeah. All right. However, women seem to be more prone to it. But these days, we're beginning to see, as far as statistics is concerned, that 1 in 4 men, okay, will experience domestic violence, and 1 in 25 men would actually be injured. And when it comes to domestic violence, remember I said earlier, it affects people, their health, and then emotionally. So these days, we're seeing that based on the stereotype that has been placed on men, not to speak up, be a man, man up, and all of that, men tend to hold back. However, because of the depth of the injury that have being inflicted on men, to the point of their lives being taken, a lot of men are summoning courage to speak up. However, they are not presenting themselves physically as it is. Okay, some are hiding behind the screen to report, because there are lots of avenues by which people can report today.
Why are they hiding? Why are men hiding?
Men today are gathering.
Why are men hiding?
Why are men?
Why?
Why are men hiding?
Yes.
Because of the belief that says a man, number one, is belief that a man cannot be abused. A woman cannot hit a man. A woman cannot emotionally abuse a man. But men are actually going through such. All right, we are having situation today where the economic power, financial power, is now flowing in the direction of women. And we're having situations today where men also are losing their jobs, and they have to sit back home. Women need to step into their shoes. So a lot of men are being abused today, also financially, emotionally, physically. But the truth is, because of the stereotype that we have, the belief we are placed on them. Be a man. A man should not cry. A man should not speak up. A man should not. So a lot of time they take it in, but it's affecting them. It's affecting the reproductive health of men. A lot of men are no longer, permit me to use the word, sexually active. They are, because a lot of things is cutting down their interest, diminishing them as men. So they cannot stand into the shoes of who they truly are. So a lot is happening, and that's why some of them will rather talk to their friends. Some of them will take to alcohol. Some of them will take to clubbing just to douse it. The ones that seem to be brave and courageous enough, they try to speak up. But they don't really speak up in the right direction. They discuss it. They mention it to people, their friends they trust. But we're encouraging men today to speak up more. Because the same law that protects the woman also protects the man. The same right a man has, a woman also has it.
That's right.
So domestic violence is not a gender thing. It's a human thing. It affects men, it affects women, it affects children. And if a woman can cry out, a man should also see the need to speak.
Interesting. And breaking that culture of silence is very, very key to fighting domestic violence. But all the same, in the midst of all of this, especially when you talk about this happening between couple, in the midst of it is the way it also affects the children in between, the children that actually witness it. So what resources do you think are available for them in order to help them to cope?
Well, basically, there is no way two elephants will enter into, it will get to the battlefield that the grass will not be affected. And much of the times, I need to say that when children are involved in any relationship where you have domestic violence, they will definitely feel the impact will be on them. It will affect them cognitively, emotionally, it will affect their academics, it will affect them behaviorally, and at times it can affect them physically. Maybe when they are fighting and children are trying and screaming, trying to separate their parents, and something hits them, mistakenly. So one of the things we need to do is we need to understand that children will definitely be affected. And that's why we need to start with empathy. We have had situations where children who have been affected over time, also themselves became aggressive, or they develop, how do I put it, behavioral issues themselves. Some of them become withdrawn, some of them become excessively outspoken, and some develop hatred towards the violent one, and some take sides. And some, when they are in school, they become very, very, very unreasonable. Let me use that word, whereby nothing sinks in. All they want is what they want, who they believe they should be. So one of the things we need to do is we start with the partners. Please, you need to understand that so long as the moment you have a child or you have children between you, you need to understand that if you can no longer stay together, please, for the sake of your child or children, there is room for separation for a while. Okay, nobody should feel guilty for taking a decision to save and salvage the sanity of their children, especially when it comes to taking them away from the exposure to violence, to anything, negativity, and all that comes with domestic violence.
Okay, so now that you've mentioned about children, I want to ask, what's the role of the schools in addressing this? Because once the child leaves the home and gets to school, spends a lot of time in the school, how can caregivers and teachers identify a child that is coming from such homes and try to help in addressing it?
Okay, it's so easy to identify, all right, because number one, domestic violence, a child that has been exposed to violence at home will definitely act out behaviorally. The major area of identification is in the behavioral aspect of the child. The child either begins to look neglected, because the truth is when parents fight and they quarrel and there are stuff, there's every tendency that the attention they give to the kids will drop. Okay, so the child looks unkept, will look unkept. The child will either not come to school with food, or homework will not be done, and then maybe the child who has been lively, used to be lively, or a child who has been, how do I put it, very active in school, will start to withdraw. Now, depending on the personality of the child may become aggressive, and the child may become withdrawn. So, and then also, the child may start to take things that do not belong to him or her. Why? Because the child is deprived, the child is hungry, the child is not getting attention. And also, the child may start to fight others, or the child will talk to friends and tell them what exactly is happening at home. My mom did this, my dad did this. So teachers and the caregivers need to pay attention to some of these things. And there are times the child could walk up to the caregiver or the teacher and say, I want to talk to you, depending on the kind of person you have been as a teacher or a caregiver. So the signs are usually all over the place, especially when it affects children. And at times, the homework will not be supervised. So when a child is known to always, default regarding the homework, then the teacher or the guardian should not jump into lashing out or, ask questions. Do you have anybody helping you? What is going on at home?
That's
or
right.
maybe, all right. So there are lots of signs to look out for in that light.
That's right. Very quickly before we let you go. At what point do you think? Because when they try to resolve issues, seeking therapy and all of that, but then it's not really working. At what point do you think it's very expedient for either party to bolt?
Wow. I want to say that, you see, when it comes to domestic violence, okay, both parties need help, all right? The one with the upper hand could be coming from dysfunctional childhood, family, it could be an individual who has been traumatized growing up, and then could be somebody who is deeply troubled as an individual. And the other party happens to be the one he or she is pouring the aggression on. So both parties need help, either the one that has the control and the one that is being controlled. Permit me to use that word. So once you get to the point where you discover that your mental health is affected, you are making mistakes, you no longer have attention on yourself, you are thinking, suicidal, or, you are becoming suicidal, and you are not, focusing on yourself, you should know that it's time to vote. Or when you're losing valuables, items, your life is on the line, you should know that it's time. Or maybe when your other partner forces you to take advantage of you sexually and you're being infected with, STDs and all of that, you need to vote. Or you are losing funds and you no longer can connect to your essence. Or you are being threatened, your life is on the line. Then I would advise that you separate, split, and then get your life together, because your life, makes more meaning to you when you are alive than when you are with an abusive partner or in an abusive situation.
Wow, very interesting submissions there, and we can only hope that houses in world over, they have very good home without having to go through the hurdles of domestic violence, because it definitely affects the superstructure of the entire world. Thank you very kindly, counselor and cognitive behavior therapist Wemima DB. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you.